You're very welcome to Radio Espial. This is our Insider episode, our late August edition. Very quickly, Radio Espial Insider is a fortnightly digest of Radio Espial's concerns, interests and priorities in the form of current news. We're going to be dealing with the media and other sources, reviews and commentary on cases, visual presentations that you'll see and cases of interest that we've come across. Showing how we work to prioritise cases of interest and what we plan to cover as it happens. We will later in this edition have subscriber interaction, welcoming suggestions for future cases to be covered, questions and feedback on the channel. We have an awful lot to get through this evening with some cases. We have our channel case updates. We're gonna sometimes talk about media reviews on how the media have dealt with criminal cases. We're going to do a little bit behind the scenes of also how we work on timelines, again much later for us. The roll call for this episode, we're going to be dealing with the Sophie Toscan du Plantier case. We're going to be dealing with COLUMBA McVEIGH and the recent search in that case. News breaking today about the Kyran Durnan case. We're going to be talking about some of the recent case anniversaries coming up. We're going to be dealing with some of your comments on the Claudia, Lawrence and Lisa Doyle timelines that we've done. We also have some mention on the Caroline Glachan trial case that we have featured recently back in, I think it was June. Thank you again for all your subscriptions. We are approaching 6,100 subscribers. You're all very welcome. Let's get on with it. Brian will be shortly joining us. A Garda cold case team reviewing the Sophie Toscan du Plantier murder investigation is awaiting a report from Irish forensic scientists on whether an advanced method of DNA collection has helped them to identify her killer. The Garda Serious Crime Review Team has been working closely with Forensic Science Ireland, that's the FSI, after it contracted an American DNA collection company, that company is MVAC Systems, to examine a number of exhibits from the near 30-year-old inquiry. Jared Brady from MVAC Systems, he's the president and chief executive, travelled to Ireland last month, that was actually in July, and spent a week examining various exhibits gathered by Gardaí as part of the original investigation into the French film producer's murder, Sophie. Mr. Bradley said ahead of his trip to meet the GSCR in July, praying for a fantastic outcome. If what I believe will happen actually does, it will be massive for us in a whole host of ways. Please pray for us. Now the case. Sophie Toscan du Plantier's badly beaten body was found on the laneway leading to her isolated holiday home in Toormore, near Schull, County Cork, on the morning of December the 23rd, 1996. Her body was discovered by neighbour Shirley Foster. Mrs. Foster alerted her partner, the late Alfie Lyons, and he notified Gardaí Sergeant Gerard Penderville, and the late Garda Billy Byrne proceeded to the scene and cordoned off the area, awaiting the arrival of their colleagues from the Garda District Headquarters in Bantry. A post-mortem revealed Sophie had been bludgeoned to death with a rock and a concrete block. These items were located close to where her body lay. Gardaí from the cold case review team based in Bantry brought several exhibits to the FSI laboratory for examination by MVAC, including this flat rough rock and also a large cavity building block found at the scene and other case material. You're going to be seeing some images as I speak. Also her dressing gown, leggings, vest and boots. Now, one thing in the reports that I have not heard mention of, and I can't speak to this. I do not know whether the items found within Sophie's kitchen that previous evening, I think there were 2 wine glasses, there was a bottle, there were dishes in the sink, other Delft materials, utensils. I do not know whether those collected evidences have also been submitted as part of these DNA checks. There has only been mention of what Sophie was wearing that evening, as well as the, should we call it, the evidence materials that surrounded her body. Now, investigators are hoping that any DNA evidence obtained will enable the FSI to make comparisons with DNA samples obtained from some 10 people. There's talk 10 to 12 people identified as suspects during the original Garda investigation. Now, this would have been originally at a very, very early stage in the opening hours of that investigation. These obviously include samples from Ian Bailey, an English journalist who later became the chief suspect in the case. He was twice arrested in connection with the murder, but was never charged in Ireland and repeatedly protested his innocence before his ultimate death last year at the age of 66. Ian Bailey was found guilty by a French court in May 2019 and sentenced to 25 years imprisonment. He was tried in absentia in France. Further, in 2020, Ireland's High Court ruled that he could not be extradited. Ian Bailey died on the 21st of January 2024, aged 66, following a suspected cardiac arrest in Bantry. In a 2001 review of the original Garda file, a solicitor at the Director of Public Prosecution's Office, Robert Sheehan, said that given the attack was carried out in a frenzied manner, one might expect that the assailant would have left traces of blood, skin, clothing, fibres or hair at the scene. However, he said no such material was discovered and there was no forensic evidence linking Mr. Bailey to the scene. Now, Garda are remaining tight-lipped about the latest developments in the case and say it would be premature to speculate on whether the MVAC technology was able to gather enough DNA from the exhibits to generate the full DNA profile to identify Miss Toscan du Plantier's killer. Garda sources confirmed they have returned possession of the exhibits throughout the cold case review, contrary to some media reports that suggested the items had been sent elsewhere. Now, what is this MVAC system, this DNA system? Well, the MVAC system was developed in the early 1990s by scientist Dr. Bruce Bradley to detect E. coli following an outbreak of the bacteria at a US restaurant chain, which led to the deaths of 4 children and left hundreds of others needing hospital treatment. Dr. Bradley died in 2009, but his son Jared Bradley, now MVAC chief executive, began exploring other uses for the technology and realised it might have an important part to play in criminal investigations. The view was endorsed by researchers at Boston University in 2012. According to MVAC Systems, its approach is particularly useful in collecting DNA samples from rough and porous surfaces, which are often difficult to sample with traditional methods such as swabbing. The system involves spraying a sterile solution onto a surface and simultaneously vacuuming it up, creating a turbulent environment that helps to break down the free DNA containing cells which are suspended in a solution, which is then collected with the vacuum. The first successful use of MVAC's technology to secure a criminal conviction came when it was used to extract DNA from a pillowcase, which led to the identification of paediatrician Dr. John Wall with his conviction for the 2011 murder of his ex-wife, Uta von Schredel, in Utah. Since then, it has been used by US police forces in hundreds of cases, including many of a historic nature, such as the unsolved rape and murder of Lisa Mitchell Jackson, aged 12, in Texas in 1979. It was also used in solving the 1995 murder of Crystal Betlenovich, aged 17, in Salt Lake City, Utah, who was found surrounded by bloody rocks after being bludgeoned to death. Swab samples taken in 2008 only yielded a partial DNA profile, but in 2013, forensic scientists used the MVAC technology and obtained a full DNA profile from the rocks, which led to the identification of Michael Simpson as the killer and his subsequent conviction. Now, our understanding, the DNA samples. Radio Espial understands that the DNA samples gathered and sent for recent analysis are centered on a list of 12, some reports 10, we believe 12, profiles and individuals, and I think that might be where there's a discrepancy. There's a difference between a profile and an individual. All who could have come into contact with Sophie Toscan du Plantier before or after her murder, and specifically in the early and mid-morning hours up until the moment her body was discovered. Forensically, this is important because it includes the DNA of early suspects and also members of An Garda Síochána who attended the scene as part of their duty. Sophie was still wearing a pair of boots which she was lightly bludgeoned to death in, close to the entrance gate of her property where her body was found. One of those boots contains what is described as unknown DNA. Garda technical experts took swab samples from du Plantier's body and clothing, as well from a rock and a concrete block used to bludgeon her to death, but forensic scientists were originally unable to find any DNA on the exhibits other than Miss Toscan du Plantier's own DNA. Now, in October 2011, a team of French forensic scientists from the Institut de Recherche Criminelle de Guardiamento National came to Ireland as part of a police team dispatched by investigating magistrate Judge Patrick Glachan to examine the case. The French scientists were given access to the exhibits, including the clothing Miss Toscan was wearing on the night of her murder, which included a short cotton top, long john style underpants, boot-like shoes with socks sewn in the top, and a blue dressing gown. The French police did not disclose whether they found anything in their forensic examination, but in May 2018, the chief suspect in the case, Ian Bailey, revealed the French scientists had found what they described as alien DNA, or as I previously described it, unknown DNA, on one of the victim's boots. Now, we've spoken in this case about this infamous gate. By the way, link probably appearing here in a card. If you want to review this case and our full feature on the case, go to the card you see there, as in any of the cases that we mention here this evening. Now, this gate. For many years, the gate removed from the property of Sophie Toscan du Plantier has almost taken on a mythical status. In our various features and updates on this case, we at Radio Espial stood over the incorrect information reported by third-party documentaries covering the case that the steel farm gate was lost, misplaced or destroyed at some point, predominantly when it came into the possession of Gardaí. This is always the problem when we rely on documentary content. It is another reason why we decided 2 months ago to move away from this kind of third-party content. One, it's not our content and has the obvious trappings of copyright issues, but more importantly for us, two, we are not applying the same research and fact-checking we would do on our own in-house timeline. Now, our understanding now is that this gate, or at least samples taken from it, that's blood spatter, was provided to the French court. And that's fine, but not good enough for a forensic chain of documented evidence. And the problem comes from articles in the media, claims and books by those involved who state movement of evidence without actual backup. Therein is where the case grossly falls down. In other words, it isn't good enough for An Garda Síochána to state that we don't have the 8-foot farm gate anymore. Whether it's lost, destroyed, it's actually irrelevant. What I want is the trail of documented evidence. The gate, samples taken from it, rather than the chain of evidence reports that proves Ian Bailey's claim it arrived in French custody and An Garda Síochána did not request its return years later. Sophie Toscan du Plantier's family knew the importance of the blood spatter and fingerprints on that gate, as well as the rough rock and concrete block found near her body by the gate. Now, my final words on this case, and we're shortly going to bring in Brian. The biggest problem with this case, it's not the mishandling of it within the initial hours and days. It's the myths, the village rumours that have compounded it. The whispers, tribal garbage and national profile it is elevated to, and a deliberate set of people, as onlookers peering in, who have set themselves a task to make this case about their own projected agendas and grievances, and sorting through that is an absolute nightmare. The lies, false witness statements exposed. I've never come across a case, at least in Ireland, where there has been so much partisan opinion. Bailey's guilty. Bailey's not guilty. He was set up. A Garda done it. The state political parties are involved. This case is every conspiracy clown's fucking dream. A case without a conclusion. Someone you can blame it on in authority. I'm angry. You're angry. We're fed up. They're fed up. And I don't like the media. If there's ever full resolution and answers in this case, it won't come from the media. Village whispers, bearing pitchforks, fawning social media bloggers who wet their pants because Ian Bailey guessed it on their podcast or met them in person. It will be resolved through forensic evidence to include or exclude Bailey as the perpetrator. And therein is what has suffocated this case. It's not about whether Bailey is the murderer or not. It's about finding and proving who murdered Sophie Toscan du Plantier. Brian, I'll bring you in now. We'll have a little bit of...
Hello, folks. Hello, Mick. This case is horrific as media circuses go. It's arguably the worst one in Ireland, I think, anyway. And I think I actually grew up in west of Cork City on the way out towards there. That Skull is it's a good way far west of Cork City. It's about 70 miles from Cork City. So it's gonna from, say, that's the equivalent of Dublin to Moat, say, in Leinster terms, like. Yeah. But I think this whole media circus, it's the classic, like, the victim here was well and truly last year. Sophie Toscan du Plantier. It became the Ian Bailey case rather than Sophie Toscan du Plantier case. She was totally lost in all of this. Her grieving family were lost. Her memory was lost. I think, some good points there, Mick. I think, the business with the gate. I mean, it's like the whole, the Gardaí, the French police, the media, the locals. I mean, Skull is not a sprawling metropolis. Like, it's got, you've got a handful of people in all this. Like, so it's like, and then all the, the perjury that was going on, all this rubbish. I mean, it is horrendous. Like, but I think it would be great if this. And the other thing I'm kind of puzzled on. This was developed back in the 90s. I'm wondering why it's so late that this technology is being invoked. Maybe there's good reasons for that. But either way, I think the whole. I think other lines of inquiry were lost as well along the way. And
because I mean, when I read back on that MVAC stuff, and I'm reading back on cases from I think 2001. Was there another one from 1996? Convictions as well during that, and I'm thinking, how has it taken so long? If this is so-called inverted commas new technology to get here to this case, it doesn't something isn't
chiming
quite right with me. You know, this doesn't quite sound as new as is being presented.
Well, you're talking about cases from 1995 and so on there, like, and it's got, you got 2011, 2013. So, like, I'm kind of wondering why it's so late coming. Anyway, look, if there is material retrievable and it can be, but again, I just go again. It's hard. I hope all this does lead them the right direction, but like, it is a case of like, how was that evidence handled properly since? Was it preserved properly since, and so on? Like, you know, because I think the credibility shot to pieces for a lot of factions there in this, and I really hope that Sophie Toscan du Plantier, justice can be found for her, and as you said in your last comment there, proving who murdered Sophie Toscan du Plantier, that this answer is found and definitively found here. Like, that's what we hope for, and all this other noise
circus,
and rubbish is, because I mean, and the thing is as well, even like some of these celebrities injected themselves into it, spending time with Ian Bailey, reporting back and writing about it, when, you know, there was far better.
Yeah, like, and I said that, you know, bloggers wetting their pants because, oh, Ian Bailey's just messaged me back, he wants to do an interview. You know,
he was not a celebrity,
fucking
and that's
Sinead O'Connor. You know, I
you know,
I've got a coffee morning with you know, Ian Bailey. This shit going on around this case was a farce.
It's disgusting. Like, it's kind of, it's, you know, I mean, it's just dreadful. Like, and I really, like I said, hopefully we get the victim gets her, and as well, I was saying to her as well, like, the casual way people talk about this case at times, like, it's almost like they're kind of thinking of it as an episode of a drama, or a sort of a murder mystery weekend, or an episode of Murder She Wrote or something like that. When, you know, this was a real vicious, brutal murder, disgusting murder. Like, and even I was saying, like, they interviewed one of those documentaries. They interviewed the priest who was on the scene. He's passed away since, Father Cashman, 2 years ago. He was a curate in the parish where I grew up, and back close towards west of Cork City. And, you know, you could see he was visibly upset. Like, he saw the whole scene there as well, and he's passed away since now. But like, it was a brutal, an awful scene. I'd say once you saw that, you could never unsee it. Like, you know, and a lot of that has been lost. Like, people aren't being reminding themselves of this. So whatever about any pet theories, Gates, you know, any other noise, celebrities going for coffee with Bailey, whatever. What I want is justice for Sophie Toscan du Plantier, and let's hope that the same fact thing delivers for us anyway. That's my last word, man.
Yeah, and like I said, there's no sides here, and if that means Ian Bailey being completely exonerated and being the fall guy, that's justice as well being done. And if something comes up that actually fundamentally ties him forensically into this case, then that's a whole different discussion that we have to have.
But it's the evidence. It's like
it's
this.
Let the evidence lead.
It's my last word, but I'm going to say it anyway. It's the you fit the you look at the evidence, and that leads you to where you're going to. You don't choose your suspect and try and fit the evidence to that like they did here. You do it the other way around. It's the evidence leads it, and then if that points to a suspect, it points to a suspect. And that's it.
Okay, let's move on to our next case. Again, developments in the last week. Now, COLUMBA McVEIGH. COLUMBA is still missing. Again, we're not here to go through this case and all the ramifications of it again. Card, you see it there. You can click it and you can go through the full feature we did on this case. This is about the actual update on the case. Now, investigators attempting to find the remains of a man the IRA murdered and secretly buried 50 years ago are searching a small area of bogland in County Monaghan. It follows a review of a previous search for the remains of COLUMBA McVEIGH, which ended at Bragan Bog in 2023. The 19-year-old from Donamore in County Tyrone was murdered in 1975. He is one of 17 victims of the Troubles, known as the disappeared. The Independent Commission for the Location of Victims' Remains, the ICLVR, has previously conducted 6 searches of the bog since 1999, covering more than 26 acres. It has described the latest search as a continuation of its last dig. It is not believed to be acting on new information and is examining an area which has not been excavated before. The search began on the 18th of August, so it's about, as we record, about 10-12 days ago, and it was projected to last 2, maybe 3 weeks. Now again, we've come across this before on another case. I'm not going to sidetrack and get into it, but you hear these projected, and it's going to take 2-3 weeks, and then suddenly it's over in days. In other words, they feel they've concluded the operation. My understanding as we speak on Friday the 29th of August 2025 is that operation is still ongoing. Now, the operation was due to have taken place 6 months ago, but was put off because there was a delay as protected hen harriers were nesting in the area. Yeah, you might think, oh, for God's sake, they're looking for a body, what are they doing? All this nonsense about, hens. Unfortunately, this kind of forensic search is incredibly invasive to the environment. You're digging, you could be digging farmland, you could be potentially cutting down bushes, you could be moving trees. This is a natural environment, so please at least give some understanding to that before you go firing off in comments about, oh, they have to find Columba, why is it taking so long? Now, Mr. McVeigh's brother Oliver said, every time they're digging and searching for him in that particular area is an opportunity to find him. I hope he's found this time and we get him into the family burial ground in Donegal, County Tyrone. Hope never fades. Now, Oliver also went on and said, he had made his mother a promise before she died that he would give her murdered son a proper burial, and he intended to keep that promise. He appealed to anyone with information to come forward in this recent appeal by Gardaí. We don't want him to be lying in a bog for another 50 years. It was a horrible crime and a horrible thing to do. We've got over all that, but it can be put right by finding his body. Now, if you wish to find more information, as I say, you can see the card there, and this really takes you through the full case, all the in-depth features and timelines that we do on all these cases. If you really want to know what's going on here, what's the real background, we're not here to go through and regurgitate cases over and over again. What we're here to do in Insider is give the latest updates. Brian, these are always when we talk about the Troubles, the Disappeared, the 17, and we know there are more. These are the official names. We know there are more people than that. Yeah. These are always difficult.
He was 19, he wasn't much more than a kid. So hopefully the brother gets answers. The mother, too late for the mother, but they just want his remains, and hopefully they find that, and that his brother Oliver, Mr. McVeigh, gets the answer he wants there. Rest in peace, Columba McVeigh, and hopefully his brother Oliver gets the answer there.
Yeah, we hope so. Again, look, when we do our next edition, it's probably going to be another couple of weeks, maybe 2 to 3 weeks before we do our next edition of Insider. If we have any updates, we will present them in our next Insider edition. Look, and I'll say it now, if you don't hear any update on the case, it likely means nothing as such came of the search. If something comes of it, I assure you we will bring it to you in some form and in some way.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll move on there to do you want anything further to add on the McVeigh case, Mick? Are we?
No. Do you wanna do the Kyran
I'll
case?
go ahead.
Yeah.
That's right. Okay, folks. So, rest in peace, Columba McVeigh. Now, we'll move on there. We have a quick update on the Kyran Durnan case. Very disturbing case. Again, for full timeline on this, there'll be the links below or a card. Now, Kyran Durnan's an Irish child who was reported missing from Drogheda, County Louth, to Gardaí at the end of August 2024, with the last confirmed sighting of him being in June 2022 when he was 6 years old, and that's over 2 years earlier. Now, Gardaí had firm reason to believe that Kyran Durnan was deceased, and a murder investigation was launched in October 2024 after Irish authorities received information suggesting that Kyran had died at some point in the previous 2 years. Now, Gardaí have renewed their appeal for anyone with any information on this case to come forward, and that appeal was made today, 29th of August, earlier on today. Now, this is a very disturbing case. There's a big web around it there. We're not going to go into that here. And meanwhile, a candlelight vigil will be held in Dundalk Square, and Dundalk's where Kyran went to school. And that's tomorrow evening, Saturday, 30th of August, as we record this now. So, again, we hope someone comes forward in this appeal and that answers are forthcoming on what happened to Kyran, and that his remains are recovered so he can be treated with proper dignity and respect. Mick?
Yeah, this was really difficult. I think in the last couple of years, of all the cases we did, this was one that created an awful lot of emotion. And I know from the feedback we have from people, look, we made it very clear when we did this case. There were 2 arrests. The case is a long way from being resolved. There are stages in an investigation. You can arrest somebody, but that's a hell of a big difference from arresting somebody and then charging them. When you charge them, you've already essentially got much of your case together. You're then presenting it to the DPP, the Department of Public Prosecution, for go ahead that you're in the right and move the trial and conviction if you can get it. We are a long way from that in this case. And I know people will say, oh, but the boyfriend was arrested, the girlfriend was arrested, she absconded to the UK, what about the grandmother? And people, all those people should be arrested for at least child neglect. Look, what I say about a case like this, I get the emotion. What do you want, people? Do you want the Gardaí to arrest that circle of people for neglect of a child, or do you want to arrest them for an actual potential murder case and push it through to conviction? What do you want? Do you just want them to be all done for child neglect? Is that it? Are you all going to be happy with that? No, of course not. The Gardaí already believe Kyran, there's no signs of life. He's likely dead. It's a matter of finding Kyran, giving him the dignity and bringing him back to his family, or at least the people who really did love him and want to care for him. And that's where we are. And this process takes time, and there's no point in getting emotional or frustrated. I understand it, but we're a long way from that point, Brian.
There's a process, there has to be evidence.
Yeah.
You get one go at it. So you can't. This is one of those.
You can't redo. You don't get 3 or 4 different chances.
No, this one in particular is one that has to be done by the book, because they all have to be done by the book. But in particular, this is one where you have to get hold of the evidence. There's no timeline even. We don't know. There's a 2-year timeline totally up in the air there. So there's no proper timeline. There's no evidence. There's no body. There's no crime scene that's known yet. So this case, like all cases, has to be worked the hard way. This one in particular, in the hardest way, without all of that. So as soon as they can get to that, get the evidence. The evidence goes in the file, it goes to the DPP, and you get one shot at it. Now, one of the main suspects is deceased, but the other people involved, you know, when the time comes, hopefully the main thing is to find Kyran and get him returned to be treated with dignity and respect. His remains to be treated with the dignity and respect that he deserves.
And
there.
Just to qualify there, we don't want to get into the circumstances. There are legal implications on this, but that person that Brian referred to as deceased, you can figure out who it was yourselves. That person, they are deceased of their own hands, shall we say.
And please don't put in the comments, folks. Please no.
Please don't start naming people and making accusations against them. There's people often say, I heard one comment today, I think it was on Josie Galvin's site, Missing International, who does some great supportive work for sharing some of the work we do here. And she had to switch comments off this morning when this news broke about, more the police wanting more detail. And someone commented that, oh, what the hell is this? Why are the police asking for the public's assistance? Surely they know what happened. Yeah, they fucking do know what happened. That's not why they're making a public appeal. They're not asking the public as such to hold their hands and help them along. They're putting pressure on the people involved in the case and people surrounding them to come forward with the information and break the silence, break the misdirection in the case. That's what's going on here. They're not
knowing something and proving it. They're
not expecting some magical public person in the public to come down and wave a magic wand and then it's all solved. That's why social media and commenting on cases like this can be very damaging. No, the public appeal today on Kyran was not done because the police are, let's see, they don't know what's going on. Or they're not appealing necessarily to the public. They are appealing to people connected with the circle of people around Kyran to come forward. They are applying pressure. That's what this is about. It's not about they're waving a magic wand because they don't know what they're doing or what the hell's going on. They know exactly what's going on. Their task is to find Kyran and lightly his body, give him the dignity, bring him home, and prosecute the people they already know are seriously knee-deep in this.
And the forensic investigation can start in earnest then, as well. That's it. Okay, I don't think there's any more can say on this week other than to say rest in peace, Kyran Durnan, and we hope she's recovered and answers.
We're getting there, but we're still a bit off. In this case.
We're going to move on now. We're going to call out a couple of anniversaries. So, firstly, remember Fiona Pender, who disappeared 29 years ago this week from flat she shared with her boyfriend John Thompson of Killea, County Offaly. They shared a flat on Church Street, Tullamore, in Tullamore, County Offaly, and she disappeared on the 23rd of August 1996. She was 7 months pregnant at the time. Now, even though her case was deemed a murder from early on in the investigation, and the suspect was always Thompson, who has since immigrated to Canada, it was eventually upgraded to a murder inquiry in May of this year, 2025. Searches in Killea, County Offaly, near Thompson's home, and the Slieve Broom Mountains near Clonaslee, County Laois, over the border into County Laois, were completed with no further updates from Gardaí. And the Gardaí made the standard statement that that's all they were going to say for operational reasons. Now, on this Sunday, 31st of August, the Fiona Pender Memorial Walk and Run, which takes place every year, will take place again on the Grand Canal in Tullamore. Now, participants will gather at the Fiona Pender Memorial Monument at Fiona's Way, the section of the canal designated Fiona's Way after Fiona Pender, before setting off at 11:30. And the walk also takes you past the Ashling Murphy Memorial as well. Now, so that's in Tullamore. It's walking distance from Tullamore Town Centre. If you come out the town centre and head towards the canal up the main drag, you get to the canal, over the bridge, turn right, and just a couple hundred yards down there, you'll see the monument and the and the canal if in the locality there. So 11:30 Sunday morning. Mick, Caroline Glachan.
Yeah, we're also remembering Caroline Glachan, 14 years of age. Caroline Glachan, who was murdered 29 years ago this week, August 25th, 1996. She was born in Derry. Her body was found in the River Leven, West Dunbarton, Scotland, and her boyfriend Robert O'Brien and his accomplices Andrew Kelly and Donna Marie Brand were convicted of her murder in 2023. There was a fourth suspect in this case, Sarah O'Neill. She died before charges were fully brought against her. Back in June, we did feature this case as one of our newer kind of features, the trial kind of trial insider in depth. We're hoping maybe to do more of that later this year. I have one other case possibly coming up that we might be able to do that. Scottish courts are very open to that kind of thing. Again, description, cards. If you want to know more about that case, and as Brian has said in the other cases, look where the flashcard comes up or look in our description, and you can really deep down dive into the case and the timelines and features that we've done.
Yeah,
now,
there's a full. Sorry, Mick, just to call it. Yeah, there's a full timeline for Fiona Pender there as well.
Yes,
and some further updates as well, including one this year. So, please look into that. And again, we hope that answers come for Fiona Pender, that her remains are recovered, and she's only one surviving immediate family member, her brother John Pender. Her other siblings passed away, as did her parents, and she has an aunt as well, at least, and some of her friends, her circle of friends. She's a close circle of friends that they organised this walk, and so we wish them all the best and hope that they get answers soon about Fiona, and rest in peace, Fiona Pender.
We're going to move into our section on your Radio Spoil community feedback. Recently, we covered two cases. We have another two coming, but the previous two cases we covered were Lisa Doyle and Claudia, the Claudia Lawrence cases. On the Lisa Doyle case, we had comments. You can see them there. I'm not going to read through them. I'm going to paraphrase some of the comments. People thought it was great episode. Can't imagine what Lisa's moments were like in the end. A bit of an interchange. I think the suggestion here in this comment and the back and forward that we had with this subscriber member was, we know it was a case of coercive control, Brian, and I think what the subscriber was getting at is, what brought them to this out of all of a sudden, what brought them to this point. And they suggested, and probably quite rightly, that we're dealing with a narcissist, and that essentially, if you look for motivation, the motivation might have been nothing more than, I give you attention, I give you life, I take it away, I decide when you die. And that may be all the motivation was for this guy, the husband who killed Lisa.
It's all control.
Yeah, and that's as brutal as it sounds. That may be what this case comes down to, because people will always ask the why, how did this happen, what motivated that person. Sometimes there's no easy answers. It is just literally that coerciveness and control. You did me. I perceive you did me wrong. I take your life away. That's it.
That's it. We did. We talked about the poise in the case, and we were saying that's it. And people like that. That's all that drives them. There's nothing remarkable about these people. And we described him. We shall not name him as the most unremarkable killer we've ever come across. Comment from Mr. Gecko. Every day we don't know family members. This was Mr. Gecko brought up the point
about Lisa's partner. We talked about that trip that was a holiday trip where he came back early, and she thought it odd because she just come back. He was meant to be staying for 2. She went on one trip for the week. He came back early from a 2-week trip, and she thought it very odd, and people around the whole situation thought it odd. And then there were questions as to as being asked by Mr. Gecko, could this guy have committed at least offences or potentially even a murder abroad and wasn't caught and hightailed it out of town? We spoke about this during the timeline. I think if it was a murder, we'd know about it, but we certainly know of incidences with a previous partner, long-term partner he had, and also potentially that there may have been other issues around women or associations that he had.
Well, he admitted to the one night stand thing.
Yeah, he admitted to it. Yeah.
But I mean, again, you're dealing with a guy, a narcissist, a coercive controller, a guy whose whole thing is about controlling people and manipulating them and all the rest of it. So, I mean, it's presumably it suited him to admit to that. And I mean, you know, some faceless, nameless person who got the better of him when he tried to do something, blah blah blah. I mean, is that, you know, there was something in it for him to say that, to throw them off the scent of something or whatever. Like, oh, it looks like he's admitting to something here now, but then there's no specifics there. So that was his own word there. Like, so you got to wonder, like, about was anything followed? Well, where do you chase it? Like, was anything followed up that as to specifics on this or specifics on anything else? So, you know, it's a strange one. All right. I mean, yeah, I'd say he probably did have form elsewhere. Like, whether it escalated to the point that it did with Lisa, we don't know. Like.
Yeah, do you want to move on to the next comment? So I think that we have to talk maybe a little bit about Claudia Lawrence case and Claudia's law, because question there from Tango Delta.
Tango Delta, valid concern. So Tango Delta talks about Claudia's law and allowing the family to appoint guardian over financial affairs for people missing for longer than 3 months, but then raises a valid concern and says that several Irish cases that its family members, including spouses, are in fact the prime suspect. And I emphasise, I don't mean the particular case, Claudia Lawrence's case. So they're just, I don't know if it's a man or woman, Tango Delta, they're saying, they're just being clear, they're not saying that in relation to Claudia Lawrence. But valid point, and I mean, I would expect, I haven't read the legislation myself, but I think I'm sure Peter Lawrence, being a solicitor, would have put in place that, you know, checks and balances must be made here. And I think, you know, I know truth is stranger than fiction and some daft things happen there, but I mean, I'm sure if the prime suspect was to be the main beneficiary there, I think that the checks and balances would have to be in place to make sure that didn't happen in that kind of a timeline, you know, unless they were exonerated at a later stage or something like that, like, you know.
Yeah, but I know I mean, okay, you know, Claudia wasn't married. You know, we previously talked about the Pender case, John Thompson, and the manner in which John Thompson and his own family, his own hereditary family, kind of almost took over the affairs of Fiona in the aftermath. And while, yes, legally it can be frustrating for families connected with the victim to see the manner in which other people who are under suspicion can easily move in and take over affairs and almost dictate the whole line of what's happening, which is incredibly difficult. And I mean, I think the Fiona Pender case, I don't think the guy, they weren't even living together. I think he was just staying there. Okay,
they did a bed sit. Yeah, he was over and back to the farm,
back and forward
like, so,
to the farm. I think it was in Laois. Yeah.
They were still not near the border of Laois. So it was about 8 miles away, like, but they had the bed sit in Tullamore, and you know, it was and you'd hope that there should be checks and balances in place anyway. And someone is the prime suspect, and they're going to be charged or expected.
Yeah,
there's a book of evidence against them, then surely you can't kind of.
I think Claudia's law is more relevant for cases like, say, the Galilee case, Joe O'Reilly, where there's an actual family involved, a murder, and where you've got an actual husband or actual spouse who is the suspect, and what happens, and whether there's a period of suspension that they cannot inherit or do anything until either the case is dropped against them or it comes to a conclusion. Because we know, I don't think it happens here as much, but you see an awful lot of those kind of cases in the US where literally someone will murder for a house that may be worth $500,000, or there's a policy taken out on them a year or two before their so-called demise, that kind of thing. So you can understand where that kind of law suddenly becomes highly pertinent. So someone who's a suspect in a case, a spouse or husband, is not seen to be profiting while they are under suspicion.
Yeah, I think part of this as well is actually managing the finances as opposed to taking them for yourself. That like for example, Claudia had a mortgage, she had bank accounts and stuff like that, and it's just kind of, and then they just can't be touched. So like if a mortgage has to be paid or whatever, that the family can intervene and take control of that and manage it accordingly. Put the money into a safe place or whatever, or make figure out what to do with a house before it end up with a massive bill or a repossession or something like that. So I think look, that's as far as we can go with that one. But thanks to Tango Delta for raising that one. Okay, now the next one is Black Widow, and she raises about the missing hair straightener not significant. No, it is of course significant, and she says it's screaming at her. It's a personal thing. You might let your close friend use it, but step away from your toothbrush. Now, where's the hair straighteners? Find them. No, and Mick, you've reverted to say, no, they were never found. Items related to hair cutting found at the house, but she took the hair straighteners with her that morning. And then there's another comment there as well. But I think the point there is that kind of asks, did she stay at the house? If she was going to stay somewhere else?
The suggestion being, could she have taken something significant, very personal item, like the hairstyle, because she left it that evening and took an item like that with her?
Yeah. Or the other thing is that they were taken with her bag, obviously, or whatever, but I think the other thing is maybe she was late leaving and she didn't have a chance to straighten her hair and she took them.
We should emphasize her bag was spotted and then somehow not picked up, mislaid. It was supposedly spotted by somebody in a field or by a ditch, and then only later went to be picked up and suddenly it wasn't there. We obviously, other than saying the hair straightener wasn't at the house, we don't know where that hair, we can't say for certain that she put that hair straightener in her backpack that and then headed out. We don't actually, it's likely that happened, but we don't absolutely know that that's what happened, other than factually the hair straightener was not in the house. So where the hell did that go?
So it is important to know for personal effects, and it you're right to call that out. So thanks, Blackwater there. David M mentions about the alleyway man was RC. That's Richard Cartwright. Why did the police even do an appeal with the footage? They'd been able to know straight away of his movements if he did this all the time. And Mick went back, valid point, something else puzzled me about the case. No, it did puzzle me, but I thought about it then and said, well, I think if Cartwright, they didn't know when they made the initial appeal, these are just figures on the screen, and then obviously they got the information later after they'd made the appeals with the CCTV footage.
Yeah, and then they looked at it
and they realised this is the guy who's doing this habitually on a daily basis or on a regular basis.
If I think of it now, and I can get the image up in post-production, and you can look at it and see the visual movements, what we're talking about is to that, I think if I visually see it, to that right-hand side is behind the house. There's a little crescent that goes up there into a car park as well. That's what we're talking about.
Well, you have if you look at it linearly, like you had the pub, then you have a bunch of terraced houses, and then you have that laneway, and then there's behind the houses as well. So it was Hewart Place, I think, which led into Hewart Road. The Hewart Road is the main road there that has the pub on it and the terraced houses, and then Hewart Place then is the bit where you turn off before you get to the terraced houses. You turn right there, and that's where those pieces of CCTV were. And then you had the pathway behind the houses then as well. So that was it. But I think he was identified after they made the appeal anyway, and they realised this guy's a local. He does this regularly, and he died a couple of weeks after she disappeared. But he wasn't linked to the case. He was pretty much. He was entirely eliminated, no more than anyone else was, but he certainly wasn't deemed to be a suspect in the case. So I think that's a valid enough explanation. Shoot me down if you want, but I think that explains it anyway. And thanks for commenting there, David. Now, Anita Gallagher raises 2 points, and she mentions the pub friends in the pub just a few doors down. No initial checks made, leaving the 24-hour window open for it to be reported missing just makes me suspicious. Now, I think leaving room for cover-up. Now, I don't think that's quite right. There were texts made. So just to remind folks there, the day after Claudia Lawrence was last heard from, we're talking about the morning when she was supposed to be going to work and didn't show up. That evening at 8 o'clock, one of her, there was a close trio of them. There was Jen King, who was 10 years younger than Claudia, and there was Susie Cooper, who was 10 years older. Now, Jen King worked behind the bar in the Nag's Head, and Susie Cooper was due to meet Claudia for a drink at about 8 o'clock or 8:30 that night. Claudia never showed up, and Susie then was trying to text her. There was no response. I think she got the hump a bit that Claudia hadn't showed up, and I think there was a bit of that there, and she regretted that after, because she realised then the next day then there was something badly wrong, and then she alerted Claudia's father. So there was checks made, and she just didn't go down to the house, and I think Claudia's mother raised that they didn't go down to the house. But I think you've got to think about socially with things as well, that like there's people have boundaries and they respect people's privacy and so on, and she might have been a bit miffed that she didn't show up, but at the same time, she cared deeply for Claudia, and she would have thought, God, I'll go off her the next day. Where the hell was she? But it was all in friendship, and I think she did follow up the next day, and she did alert Peter, because he used to have a drink with them sometimes in the Nag's Head, Claudia's dad. So I don't think there's any concerns there, or there was any conspiracy there, that that was all genuine and above board, and I think. Unless you're there, you can't understand the social dynamics that were going on there as to why they didn't go down to the house. I'm sure there was good reason for that. They probably thought, Claudia's got to sleep, she's gone with someone else, whatever. That there would have been reasons that they would have done that. But when she did become clear that there was something wrong, she was straight in there alerting Claudia's dad. So that's that point. Now, the second point she makes is very pertinent. The second point Anita Gallagher makes, her back doorway, the place we discussed already with Hewart Place, coming off Hewart Road. You've got the block of houses, and you've got the Nag's Head, and then the bit behind. And she mentions that her back doorway was only merely just a few steps away from the Nag's Head. Basically, the car park virtually looks onto her back gate. Now, I may be wrong, but I think the answer lies somewhere around here, just a viewer's hunch. Now, I think the pertinent thing here is, the Nag's Head was centre of the case. There's a few different angles. There was thoughts that she was seeing somebody out in Acomb, and there was several things unknown, but the main social circle of things seems to be around here, and the Nag's Head the answers are around there, definitely, from the sound of it. Not definitely, but that's where we'd be leaning anyway. Now, the car park backs onto it, and that was a point Mick raised there as well, and was a valid point about that a vehicle had to be involved really if Claudia was killed at her house or near it. then a vehicle had to be involved. Now, given that all the CCTV was at beyond the gable end of the last terraced house at the opposite end from the Nag's Head, then having a vehicle there would be would have been spotted probably on the CCTV, whereas the Nag's Head car park, where doesn't seem to be any CCTV working at the time, there's another avenue of inquiry, and the back of the houses wasn't really highlighted too much there either. So I think, yeah, fair point, Anita Galler, thanks for that. And I think there's, if it's not done already, there was room for investigation there. Mick, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I think we've summed it up. Like I said, we're not here to try and expertly answer every single questions. This is still, very open possibilities. We're not here to shut down any possibility other than provide some clarity as to, and it's why Anita raised that point and said, well, look, you guys didn't maybe pay more attention to what was happening at the back of the that's fair. That's relevant. That's a possibility.
Definitely.
I haven't heard the UK police talk enough about that, because like I said, we saw Richard, the other landlord, walking around that area, and so it's a traversed area, but we don't know, and we're not going to try and put forward answers where we don't have answers, and that's just where we are. Caroline Glachan case, this is more just the importance of updates and why we do updates. Back in June, as I said, we did that trial feature in 2 parts in June on the Caroline Glachan case, and Mary here saying, good to see this case has been solved. It's been so torturing for the family. Where Lover Snow, I recall seeing the case on Crime Lion, Crime Watch UK, and very happy to see it's been solved. Love these court things. More please, thank you. We're trying to line up maybe something like that coming up in the next month or two. I think again on the Caroline Glachan case, it reflects where people see a case for the first time on these police appeal programs, and so often we see this reflected in the comments where people come back and say, oh my god, I didn't know that case was resolved, or I heard about that case but I thought it had been solved, and now I realise no, they're still making appeals. And that's why we do an awful lot of the updates that we do, to bring you all up to date as to where cases are, and we revisit them consistently. Now, what have we got coming up as we conclude this Insider episode? Well, coming up on Radio Espial, we've 2 timelines. We are going to do our best to get the first one to you next week, but please don't hold us to that. We don't know. There's an awful lot of working things going on in these cases, and an awful lot of work that goes behind them. Now, the first one we're going to have coming up is Charles Self. This is a case back from 1982. Charles, or Charlie Self, as he was referred to, was an English-born Scottish set and stage designer who worked at RTE, that's for people outside of Ireland, that's the national broadcaster in Ireland, and he worked there from 1978. He was attacked violently and murdered at his home in January 1982 in Monkstown, Dublin. Charles Self had worked at the BBC in the 1970s and was recruited by RTE's head of design, Alpha O'Reilly, going to hear more about that in a second, in 1978, and relocated to Dublin. He was the main set designer then for the Late Late Show, famous Irish chat show. He shared a home in Annesley Mews on Brighton Avenue in Monkstown with broadcaster Vincent Hanley, aka Fab Vinny, very famous early 80s DJ. You might remember him from, I think it was
MT
USA.
Music Television USA.
Yeah. Charles Self was openly gay. On the 20th of January 1982, Charles Self visited a few pubs from 8:30 and after 10:30 p.m. was in the gay-friendly Bartley Dunn's pub on Stevens Green Street Lower, where he remained until closing time. He was later in a late-night restaurant called the Hot Pot Cafe to buy takeaway food and left at 12:05 a.m. He was reportedly with a fair-haired man in a two-piece suit when they got into a taxi at 12:20 a.m. The taxi driver said the passengers became amorous in the back seat and he left them at Ainsley Mews at 12:40 a.m. a time confirmed by a Garda on 24-hour duty outside a judge's house nearby. Now, Vincent Handley, that's the DJ we refer to, appears not to have been at home that night, the house he shared with him. But another RTE set designer, Bertram Bertie Tyler, was staying in Handley's room rather than returning to his cottage in County Wicklow. Tyler came downstairs at 8:45 a.m. that morning and found Charles Self's body lying in a pool of blood, partly slumped against the front door. He had been stabbed 14 times and there were 3 slash wounds to his throat. Part of the cord from a red dressing gown belonging to Handley was also wound tightly around his neck. Tyler tried to use the phone but could not get a dial tone, so he rang Dunleary Garda Station from the neighbouring mews next door. That's the first upcoming case you're going to hear from. Brian, you're going to talk about the Alpha O'Reilly case, which is sort of cross-referenced into the Charles Self case.
So I think the guys are connected, but the cases aren't
not
necessarily.
Yeah.
So, I mean, no, Alpha O'Reilly was an older man born 1922. He was still alive in January 1986. That's as far as we can go, because Alpha O'Reilly disappeared in early January 1996. He was a very successful set designer and a senior figure in his field at RTE, again, National Broadcaster of Ireland, for over 25 years. He was also a talented actor and artist and respected for many years in the theatre circles in Dublin. Now, he was born in Ballinasloe, that's County Galway, East County Galway, on the border with Roscommon in 1922, and he was reared in Westport, County Mayo. Now, he worked in England in the late 1950s, and some of his work included set design for 5 episodes of the first series of the hit show The Avengers, which was a very popular show in the 60s there. Now, he later returned to Ireland and settled in Dublin. He joined the state broadcaster in 1960, which soon became RTE, because it was radio up till then. TV only came in Ireland in the early 60s, and he became head of design the following year and director of design from 1972 until his retirement in 1987. Now, the late Charles Self, who Mick just discussed there, was recruited by O'Reilly, and he worked under him at RTE for nearly 4 years at the time of his murder in 1982. Remember, he moved in 1978. Now, O'Reilly was gay, less flamboyantly so than Charles Self, and he lived alone at his house on Strand Road, Sandymount, Dublin. His sister Peg had lived with him until her death the year before his disappearance. So Alpha O'Reilly was last seen on either the 2nd, 3rd or 4th of January at 3 a.m. in the morning when he stopped for petrol in Ashford, County Wicklow. He did not seem well, he seemed forgetful, and he was last seen heading in the direction of Wexford. His car, which was a green Mitsubishi Colt, new car, registration number 95D 6446, is also missing and has not been located to date. Now, the O'Reilly case was featured on episodes of Crime Line. It's now called Crime Call, used to be called Crime Line back in the 90s. Firstly, shortly after his disappearance, and his case was highlighted regularly over the 29 years since. Yet no trace of Alpha O'Reilly or his car had been found. His car has not left the country, his passport was left at home in Dublin, and his bank account has not been accessed since. And the case and the disappearance of Alpha O'Reilly remains open and unsolved. So we'll put together a timeline on that in the coming weeks on that as well, folks.
Thank you for joining us. Thank you for all your support, your continued comments, your subscribes. If you feel you've got an important comment on a case, by all means put them under where that specific case is and comment on it. If you have more general comments about the channel and that's fine. We're open to constructive feedback. Always click that posts link at the top of the YouTube channel, and if you click in there and find the last Insider post we did and make your pertinent comments there, it's always best. If you just want to comment on a specific case, then obviously do it under the specific case then on the channel itself. Again, thank you for joining us on this edition of Radio Espial Insider. As you've heard, the 2 timelines, we'll do our best to get them to you as soon as we can. There is a reason why Brian and I looked at these 2 historic cases. As I say, there is a little bit of a crossover because both men knew each other and they're kind of in the same geographic, and that's why we kind of felt they were good as a pairing together. We'll discuss more about that as we do the timelines. Again, thank you everybody. God bless. Take care of each other.
Thanks, folks. All the best.
Brian, thank you again for all your input on the channel. We'll see you again, guys, soon. Take care.
Thanks, folks.